Mad Movie Mark, another Mad Movie Mark movie review. Thank you for joining me as I review the 1944 Shakespearean adaptation of Henry V.
He is of the color of nutmeg and of the heat of the ginger. He is pure air and fire, and all other jades you may call beasts. Deserved praise on my palfrey. I once writ a sonnet in his praise.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's very nice of you. So this movie is directed by, and is produced by Laurence Olivier. He plays Henry V. It also stars Robert Newton as Pistol, Frederick Cooper as Corporal Nym, and Ray Edmonton as Bardolph. So just like every movie, I am reviewing every movie that has 100% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm giving them all a score of 1 to 10. After I watch them and score them, I will rank them from worst to best. I started in the 1920s silent movie era, and now I'm at 1944 with Henry V. So Laurence Olivier was nominated, or he received an honorary Oscar for this movie for directing, producing, and acting, and bringing a Shakespearean play to the big screen. It's not the first Shakespearean play that was brought to this big screen, but it had the most critical and financial success of any of those. So it's considered kind of the springboard to all Shakespearean plays that were brought to the movie medium. It was also nominated for Best Actor for Laurence Olivier, Best Art Direction, and Best Music Score of a Dramatic or Comedy. So, like I said, this movie has 100% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes from the critics and a 75% fresh rating from the audience, so there is a bit of a gap there. So when the movie opens up, a guy enters. So basically this starts on the stage, kind of like it would have been during a Shakespearean play. So the gentleman walks out and basically says, please use your imagination to fill in the gaps that we're going to talk about. Like if we're going to talk about horses that are galloping, please picture the galloping of the horses in your head. And then he then goes behind the curtain and the play starts. When the play starts, there's basically two people that are talking on a balcony. They're talking about a bill that wishes to strip their lands from them. They offered the king a lot of money and a new title of Duke, but the talk stopped when the French ambassador wanted an audience with the king. Henry believes that he is the rightful king of France and that he should be able, he is the rightful king through birthright, and that he should be given France.
Charles, the Duke of Lorraine, sole heir male of the true line and stock of Charles the Great.
So he is given an audience from kind of the French ambassadors, and they said that this is a gift from the French Dauphin, and when he opens it is a bunch of tennis balls.
What treasure, uncle? Tennis balls, my liege.
Which is supposed to basically show that King Henry is young and he's naive and he's really not fit to be a leader because of his age. After this scene, we are then shown a scene that introduces Corporal Nym, Bardolph, and Pistol. Pistol and Corporal Nym have some sort of beef between each other, though I'm not sure quite what the beef is. I didn't really understand it. I just know that there's some type of quarrel that they're having with each other. And then I believe it's Pistol's wife comes out and she starts telling a lot of jokes that I'm assuming are jokes because the audience is laughing. But I don't quite understand what they're saying.
No harm it's not long. For we cannot lodge aboard a dozen of 14 gentlewomen that live honestly by the prick of their needles. But it'll be thought we keep a bawdy house. Right.
I can follow along through most of the movie, but there's little parts in the movie that I'm not sure what's going on or what they're talking about. So she comes out and she starts telling a bunch of jokes and everyone starts laughing. But then they learn that Henry's friend Falstaff is dying. So they kind of stop with the merriment and the jokes. And then for some reason, the Corporal, Nym, and Pistol start to try to have a fight between each other. And Bardolph stops it by raising his sword and says, "He who strikes the other one first will meet my sword." And that's basically how that scene ends. So Falstaff ends up dying. Then they all three kind of, I'm guessing they're like reflecting on their lives and they're reflecting on death. after he dies. After he dies, we then leave the Globe Theater, which we were in, and we go to Southampton, where Henry gives kind of a rousing speech to his people.
But when the blast of war blows in our ears, then imitate the action of the tiger. Stiffen the sinews, summon up the blood. Disguise fair nature with hard-favored rage.
In the next scene, what I believe is happening is that the leader of France is shown in a room with all of his kind of leaders around him, and he's kind of worried about the number of people that King Henry have at his disposal.
Thus comes the English with full power upon us, and more than carefully it us concerns to answer royally in our defenses.
And he's kind of worried that the war is coming to him and that maybe they're not ready for a war. King Henry's, a member of King Henry's side then shows up and he asks for an audience with the leader of the French. He is granted an audience and he basically says, like, we're here to request the crown. Our king deserves the crown by birthright and we're here to request it.
If not, what follows?
Bloody constraint. For if you hide the crown even in your hearts, there will he rake for it. Therefore in fierce tempest is he coming.
And then the leader of France just says, well, give me like a day to think about what our answer is, and after a day we will let you know, and then that'll be that. Then we're taken to another battle where King Henry gives another speech, and it kind of fires up the men, and they're ready for battle. We then come to kind of a town where the leader of the town is kind of on a balcony, and he's saying that they can't defend the castle that they are currently in, and that they yield the castle to England.
Therefore, dread king, we yield our town and lives to your soft mercy. Enter our gates.
So now this plot, I mean, this isn't the main thing that they're after, but this is a battle in which they have won at least this kind of foothold in France. We then, after this, we get to a scene with Catherine, which I don't know what's going on because she's speaking French, and the version of my movie wasn't able to caption this and wasn't able to translate any of this. So she's talking about different parts of her body, in which she specifically says like elbow, like finger, wrist, or something.
Vous prononcez les mots aussi droit que les natifs d'Angleterre.
Oh, je ne doute pas d'apprendre, par la grâce de Dieu, et en peu de temps.
But I'm not sure what she's talking about aside from that. This goes on for a few minutes, and then we're left to another scene. Henry then gives another speech, and then the night before the battle, he decides that he's going to disguise himself so that his men can't recognize him. Then he's going to go around his little village, his little where the men are prepared to fight from, and he's going to try to figure out what each of the men think about him. So since he's disguised, he can kind of get the real opinion of what these people think about him. Now, Pistol is the first person that he sees, and Pistol pretty much says that the king is like the greatest man alive, and like he kisses the king's foot.
Then you are better than the king.
The king's a bawcock and a heart of gold, a lad of life, an imp of fame, appearance good, a fist most valiant. I kiss his dirty shoe.
And things like that. And then after that, he runs into a group of people who they're talking about, he brings up the battle, and they say, if we lose a lot of people and the king ends up being wrong in what he's fighting for, and his fight and his cause is not just, then it is the king's fault, and he should be held at fault. Of course, Henry kind of says that he doesn't believe that this is the king's fault, because it is the men's job and their will to fight for the king, and that is just how it goes, and the king shouldn't be held at fault for what's going on.
No, if these men do not die well, there'll be a black matter for the king that led them to it.
The day before the big battle, he gives this famous speech about St. Crispin's Day. It's a St. Crispin's Day speech. This is also used to kind of rally the troops.
This day is called the Feast of Crispian. He that outlives this day and comes safe home will stand a tiptoe when this day is named, and rouse him at the name of Crispian.
He is very good at giving speeches that are meant to rally the troops. In fact, in most of his scenes in this later part of the movie, it's basically just him giving rousing speeches, which works because his men absolutely adore him and the way he is able to carry himself. When the battle actually begins, England launches just a bunch of arrows at the French. The French were not prepared for this. They have a lot of thick, really heavy armor, and these arrows are being launched at them, and their army is just getting decimated by these arrows. And the men are falling off their horses. There's like a bunch of mud around everywhere, so they're getting kind of bogged down in the mud with their heavy armor. This is a way for England to kind of get one up on the France, because apparently France has a lot more men, from what I understand, than England does. Like, they have a lot more soldiers at their disposal. So this is a kind of a way of leveling the playing field. But as this is going on, a group of people from the French side decide that they're going to go kill all the boys and squires on the English side. Which is against the rules of war and the rules of battle at the time, because these boys and these squires are unarmed. They're just kind of innocent people who come along for the battle. So this really angers Henry, and he says, like, this is the first time really that I can remember since I've been in this battle that I've been really angry. So he ends up going out, and he ends up fighting with the French constable, and he ends up beating the French constable, though I don't think that he actually kills him. I think that he just knocks him out and beats him in battle. From what I saw, it doesn't look like the blow he gave would kill him. So then England has won the war, and they now are able to take over the French cities for England. And at the end of the movie, they're kind of going over the agreements and everything, and like the declarations with each other. And Henry V says, "Hey, Catherine, how about you and I like be together as a couple?"
Will you vouchsafe to teach a soldier terms such as will enter at a lady's ear and plead his love suit to her gentle heart?
Okay, I didn't really expect that, but that's kind of how the movie ends. So first of all, I know that this is a very choppy review because, like I said, I'm not a expert of Shakespeare, and it is really quite hard for me to follow sometimes. So I took a lot of notes, and hopefully I got most of that correct. But what do I think of the movie? So I think that the movie actually is visually stunning. The Technicolor is fantastic. There's not a lot of movies that I've watched on this Rotten Tomatoes list that are in color, only a handful. That's because we're only in the 1940s and color is not the norm yet. But the big battle scenes like this type of movie and with Robin Hood, I think really deserve Technicolor. And they really pop and they really come out and everything looks fantastic. The acting is absolutely amazing. There's not one actor in this movie or actress that I think is bad. They all do very well with their characters. I think that Pistol is supposed to be kind of a guy who thinks he's a kind of a big man, a big fighter, but actually is kind of a coward. And he does a very good job with that. They all do a really good job in character. Laurence Olivier is absolutely amazing. He is like the king of speeches. It seems like all of the rousing speeches that he gives, he does a really good job. Even I can't knock the movie for not being able to understand it that well, because this is just how they talked. It's not their fault that in this day and age we can't really understand them that well. So I'm not going to really talk about the language gap or the language barrier. That is basically my job to try to understand what's going on. And I think for the most part I followed it, but if not, let me know. But I thought this movie was very well done. The cinematography is great, the camera work is great, the direction is fantastic, and you really have to hand it to an actor that can act, direct, and produce his own movie like this, especially one that's on this scale. So what did I not like about this movie, or what did I think was confusing or wrong about this movie? So one thing I was definitely confused about was when we first meet the leader of France, it seems like he's concerned about the number of soldiers that England has, or at least their ability to wage war and their ability to fight. I don't know. I don't remember. I can't think of a time in this movie where this was resolved and where they had more men. I know there was times in this movie where they talk about the French aren't ready yet and that they don't have enough men secured. But there's never a time in this movie where I felt like the French would be able to overpower England as far as soldiers go. But then at the end of the movie, when they're having their final battle scene, I'm pretty sure there's a point where England is saying that they have France has 5-1 as far as men goes against England. So they have 5 times the amount of soldiers that England has. And then when they end up doing their archery and fighting, shooting their arrows, that's when they're able to level the playing field. But I don't remember this ever being mentioned or this ever happening. So at the end, when I heard this number and they said, oh, the French have like 5 times the amount of men that we do, I was thoroughly confused, because when did this happen? Like, I thought that France was kind of concerned about this war. They were kind of concerned about going into it. You know, they yielded one of their cities, one of their towns to England because they didn't have enough people to defend it. So at what point does France actually have the right amount of people? And, you know, their armor is tougher and better than England. So why were they confused at one point? Or not confused, but why were they concerned about fighting England when they can apparently muster up so many men? I mean, it's just a tactical issue as far as losing to bow and arrows. I mean, they had the men, they had the armor, they had everything. You can't just assume that there's going to be a tactical, they're going to have a tactical advantage over you. So I didn't understand like why at the end of the movie they had so many more men than England. I also, at the end of the movie, were reintroduced to Catherine, and Henry says he wants to have a relationship with Catherine, but I don't remember anywhere in the movie where he actually met her or interacted with her in any way. Maybe it was off-screen stuff, but is this just love at first sight for him? Because it would be very first sight if he's asking her to marry him or have a relationship with him. They don't even know each other. I mean, this is a woman who her country has just lost their country, supposedly. I think that England was supposed to have taken over France, so she's kind of down and out. So is he trying to take her on some sort of rebound, or what's going on here? So I didn't understand that relationship either. But all of this could be just a communication gap, like I said. Maybe there were times in the movie where this was all mentioned and this was alluded to, but I don't remember any of it. And we also have to realize that this is based on a Shakespearean play. So did they just shorten the play? Was there more about these relationships and about the number of troops and the quality of troops in the play, in the Shakespearean play that was left out? I have no idea. And I know that a lot of these other characters were in other Shakespearean plays, because just by doing some research after the fact. So do we really know all we need to know about these characters? Do we really have the backstories that we need? Is everything kind of bundled and tightened up enough to where we can really understand what's going on? And I'm not sure. I realize I understand some of the characters. I realize, like I said, Pistol is kind of like a guy who tries to be tough but really isn't. But I think there's some intricacies here that maybe we don't know about. And I wish I could have a better backstory on some of these characters. I mean, you're obviously rooting for England here, but I wish I could have a better sense of I'm rooting for all of these characters individually. But I really don't know. I mean, Pistol is kind of should I root for Pistol? Because obviously he is he has some sort of courage because he's going into fight. But is he really a character that warrants rooting for? I don't know, because I don't know a lot about him. So it's a little over 2 hours. They pack a lot into this movie. I wasn't too thrilled with the fighting scenes, but they did what they could for the time. But I thought there were much grander fighting scenes and like the Adventures of Robin Hood, and that movie is older than this movie. So I feel like maybe more could have been done here, but all in all, it's a really good movie. I mean, for me to at least understand Shakespeare the little bit that I did for this movie, that's a huge win, because like I really don't understand Shakespeare at all. So the more I watched it, the more I probably was able to pick up on some things, but there's still some things obviously that I did not pick up on. But anyway, I thought this movie was overall really good. It might be a movie that I would watch again at some point. I know that there's like a 1980s version of Henry V that also has 100% fresh rating or Rotten Tomatoes, so I will have to revisit Henry V if that stays 100%. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe there'll be some comparisons to both of them. But that is my review of Henry V. I hope you will join me next time when I review Laura. Oh yeah, and for Henry V, I give it an 8.5 out of 10, just because, like I said, there were some gaps that I personally couldn't fill. And if they did fill them through the movie, I don't think that they were apparent enough to where they jumped out enough to where I actually was able to get it. So I think that maybe if they did mention it, maybe some other people had a problem with kind of finding that information in the movie. So maybe they could have done a little better. So that is 8.5 out of 10. Thank you. I hope you have a great day.